Well, I either started the recording or started the auto-destruct sequence. And I apologize in advance if you go to the YouTube channel and you find just a black screen or a picture of the ceiling, but that's the nature of what we get from the recording, because I move when I lecture. Those of you sitting on the back who think you're going to get away from me, it isn't over. So let's start with a definition. Science. What is it? If you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers. And probably 10 of them will be wrong. Because there's a lot of things that are labeled science that are not science. So the definition we're going to use is this. And yes, you do need to get this down. Science is a means of answering questions. It is a way to answer questions. Put that in your own words. It doesn't have to be word for word what I said. But the bottom line is, to be a scientist means you have to be curious and you have to want to know how the world works. Does anybody here an athlete play a sport?
Chess
What do you
count?
play? Huh?
Chess count?
Chess?
Yeah.
Sure, chess is a great one. I'll tell you what, I'll play in a game of chess.
Okay.
Winner take all. You beat me, you get an A plus. You never have to show up again.
Really?
Yeah. I bet you have to come to every class and lecture and go to your
Or you're a grandmaster.
Huh?
Maybe beat you at mine, roller derby.
I'm sure you could. But age and treachery will beat youth and enthusiasm every day of the week. Why? Because you're going to show up to play chess, aren't you?
Yeah, I could.
I'm going to show up wearing shoulder pads, a helmet, and spiked shoes. Is this a fair match?
No.
Who said no?
Me.
I'm cheating, right?
Yes.
Because I'm not following the rules. Science is the same way. If you don't follow the rule book, it is not science.
I don't know how that's gonna help you in chess, but
You're not sure you can trust me now. Does everybody see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
You have to follow the rule book. The rule book of science is called the scientific method. The scientific method. And this is something you've probably been talking about since you were in middle school. But we're going to break it down into 5 steps, and I want you to get all 5. In fact, this would probably be a great exam question. List and describe the 5 steps of the scientific method. Step number 1 is to ask a question. If science is a process for answering questions, we got to start off by asking questions, don't we? Not every question can be addressed with science. A scientist admitting that science has limitations? We got to play fair, don't we? Who shall I pick on? You smile too much. You're right in front, the dead center. So, what's your name?
Ben.
Ben. So, I'm going to ask you a question, Ben.
Okay.
Do you think drinking increasing amounts of caffeine will lead to an increase in the likelihood of a heart attack?
I would say so, yeah.
That's a pretty good question, isn't it? What's your name?
Pamela.
Pamela. Can science be used to address that question?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody see where I'm going with this? I've already picked on you. You've been smiling, What's your name? What's your name?
Isaiah.
Isaiah. You have a soul?
I believe I do, yeah.
Where do you keep it? Seriously, I keep mine in my left pinky. Is that a good scientific question?
No.
It's not an invalid question, is it? If you look through history, philosophers, theologians, lots of people have asked that question, and they've proposed answers, haven't they? But it's not one science can't address. That's what I want you to understand, and what I mean when I say we've got to play by the rules.
Maybe not yet.
Huh?
Maybe not yet.
Maybe not yet. And that's a good point. One analogy that somebody gave me about science as a body of knowledge is, imagine you're in a dark room. Let's turn out the lights and black out everything. If I went to the center of the room and struck a match, there's not going to be enough light for me to see everybody's face over here in the periphery, right? If the light represents the known, the darkness represents the unknown. And when I'm holding that match, the boundary between the light and the darkness is very small, isn't it? That boundary represents the questions that we can ask. When you don't know a lot, you can only ask the most basic questions, can't you? That expands the circle, doesn't it? That expands the questions. You see where I'm going with this? Knowledge is always advancing. Make sure you know that. Make sure you understand that. I would be willing to bet that not a single one of you would like to use the same textbook I used when I took my first biology class 37 years ago. All right? She's smiling at me. What's your name?
Reagan.
Reagan. Would you like to use that textbook, Reagan?
Sure.
Sure. It's easier. It's probably also outdated. Would you agree?
Very much.
Very much. It represented the state of the art at that point in time, but knowledge has surpassed it. That cheapo tablet I've got up there recording has more information storage capability, more memory, a faster processor than all of the computers that were used to send humans to the moon.
8 megabytes.
That's impressive, isn't it? So I want you to understand what might be a bad question today might be a good question tomorrow. But we're only limited by what we have here and now. So that brings up step 2. Propose a hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? Don't answer that. What's your name? Alina? Aaliyah. Aaliyah looked like she was getting ready to answer that. The reason I say don't answer it because most people have heard it's an educated guess. Am I right? I hate that answer. Every time I hear that, I want to throw something heavy in the alley at this person who's speaking. Because it makes it sound like there's a lot of uncertainty. So here's a better answer. A hypothesis is a proposed answer based on previous knowledge and experience. It is a proposed answer based on previous knowledge and experience. There's not a lot of guesswork about it. When I picked on Ben and I asked him the question about drinking more and more caffeine and whether or not that increased the risk, you've actually heard a few things, haven't you?
Yeah.
You might have drunk some coffee in your lifetime and felt that buzz. I see a few of you not. Life experience counts, folks. A fresh perspective counts, doesn't it? So we're going to say that a hypothesis is a proposed answer based on experience and knowledge. hypothesis has to have 4 characteristics that make it good. And yes, you do need to know these. Yes, this could be a good exam question. What are the 4 characteristics of a good hypothesis? Number 1, it's best if it's stated as an if-then statement. Now, what does that mean? Well, here's an example. If caffeine increases the risk of a heart attack, then people who drink more coffee will suffer more heart attacks. Is that an if-then statement? It's a good hypothesis so far. Let's check out the second requirement. It's predictive. Predictive. Did I make a prediction there, Reagan? And I'm just trying to repeat your so I get it. More cups of Java you drink, more likely you are to have a heart attack. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Everybody see what I mean when I say it's predictive? What's your answer? Ned. I'm just trying to learn. Third is it has to be falsifiable.
Sorry, that's just last week.
Falsifiable. What does that mean? Well, here's how you do it. You guys don't get any coffee. You just get coffee flavored water. You guys get 1 cup a day. Y'all get 2 cups a day. 3 cups a day.
Question.
Hold on, yes, sir.
How do you spell falsifiable?
Falsifiable. Falsifiable.
Does that go with predictive?
Huh?
Does that go with predictive?
No, this is characteristic number 3, it comes after it. Is my hypothesis falsifiable? Well, look at what we set up. 0 caffeine, 1 unit of caffeine, 2 units of caffeine, 3 units of caffeine. Can we count heart attacks? So this group is over here, we expect to be suffering most of them. If we don't, we falsified our hypothesis. Did everybody see how that works? That's what I mean when I say falsified. And then the last one is probably the most important one. It has to be predictive. Predictive. Oh wait, I already said it. Testable. Testable. It has to be testable. That test is called an experiment. I just designed an experiment to test my hypothesis, didn't we? We have a group that's getting no caffeine. They are our baseline. They're what we call the control. And yes, you do need to get that down, the control. The control group does not get the experimental treatment. The experimental group are the coffee drinkers. They're the ones that get the treatment.
EG.
Like I said, just try to learn. You can tell I'm left-handed, right? Start over here and work my way. Unless I got people that are just up here. The control group gives us a baseline for comparison. If you don't have a control, you don't have an experiment. It's that simple. Is everybody clear on that? Now, we don't have to have 3 groups, do we? I can say everybody over here gets water, everybody over here gets coffee. Split it, the 2 groups. That's not as good an experiment as what I designed because I'm going to have multiple data points, right? But as long as you've got a control group and an experimental group, you've got an experiment. Everybody clear on that? You need to be able to identify the control group and the experimental variable. This is also going to bring up something we call the dependent variable and the independent variable. The dependent variable and the independent variable. The independent variable is the one you control. In this case, how much coffee we get is the independent variable. Does everybody see that? It's going to be constant, isn't it? 0 over here, 1 unit here, 2 units here, 3 units here. It's not going to change. It's independent of the conditions. Everybody see that? The dependent variable is the one we expect to vary. It is the one that depends on the conditions. In our case, we're going to say that the dependent variable would be the number of heart attacks. Everybody see how that works? We don't control that, do we? Now, there are a lot of other factors that are going to come into play, right, Nick? And I'm just trying to remember your name, but I'll get it again.
Caught me lacking for like half a second.
No?
I zoned out like half a second before you said my name.
All right.
Perfect time.
Perfect timing. I was just trying to remember your name. Don't worry, you're still on my good side. You got a good t-shirt on. Somebody's got cool names. Does everybody see how that works? You need to know the difference between independent variable and independent variable. If any of this is not clear by, say, Wednesday after the lecture, make sure you let me know so I can clarify it for you, okay? So now that leaves us to step 3, which is to test it or conduct an experiment. To test the hypothesis. Have we proposed our answer? That was step 2. Now we're testing our answer. We're going to see, is this a good answer or is it a bad answer? A lot of people fail here because they don't design their experiment well. I've already told you what makes a good experiment, right? Control group, experimental group, dependent variable, independent variable. Now, this is going to lead us with a lot of what we call data. The way I set this up, we could do a little graph, couldn't we? We could put amount of coffee on the bottom, 0, 1, 2, 3. Everybody agree? We could do the amount of heart attacks on the Y. 1 heart attack, 2 heart attacks, 3 heart attacks. We're going to expect a slope to look like that, aren't we? So this is what we're doing in step 4. We're analyzing our data and we're drawing conclusions. We're analyzing our data and we're drawing conclusions. I make that graph, I see that slope goes this way, and I say, yep, looks to me like the more coffee you drink, the more heart attacks you're suffering. What happens if the graph goes this way?
It's less.
Huh?
Then it's less.
We falsified our hypothesis.
Yeah, you falsify your hypothesis.
But we still have to look and see which way that graph goes.
Yeah.
What if you just put your data in the wrong spot?
Well, I won't get to that. Seriously, I've seen it happen. There's a reason we do these the way I'm doing it. Is everybody with me? Are we done? Well, you know we're not because I said there were 5 steps. Unfortunately, believe it or not, a lot of people stop there. They missed the last step. In many ways, this is the most important step. Yes, ma'am?
Document your data. Thing.
Well, that falls under analysis and collect your data. I'm trying to make this simple.
Just replicate the experiment.
That's kind of part of communicate your findings. Communicate your findings. Now, what's your name, sir?
Travis.
Travis. Travis, thank you, Travis, said we need to replicate it. Yeah, I guarantee you, I'm not gonna publish any results until I've done it 2 or 3 times. But every single time I do it, I get that slope. What am I gonna do next?
You can, or publish your.
Publish. And this leads us to a process called peer review. How many of you heard that term? Most of you. How many of you think you know what it means? A couple of you.
I don't know quite the exact process.
Well, we're gonna make Isaiah our journal editor. Me and Ben did the study. I'm the professor, he's the graduate student. He goes into the lab and does all the work and writes it up. I put my name on it and submit it to him. That's about how it goes. But you get that paper. You're an editor, you have to decide, am I going to publish this? What do you do next? Well, you know Angie is an expert in this field, right? So you send her a copy of the paper. You know, Travis is an expert in the field, so you send him a copy of the paper. Travis there has got some concerns about my experimental design. He gets in the lab and does it, and his slope doesn't quite look like that. Because you're a curious man, right? Angie looks at it, and she thinks it's a pretty good paper. It needs a couple of minor revisions, but do you recommend publication, Angie?
Yes.
Yeah, why not? You want on my good side, because you want in there. So you return it with him saying, publish with these changes. Travis says, I just don't feel comfortable recommending this for publication. It's not a bad study, but it's not a good study. We need to see more done. We need to see somebody talking about genetics of the participants. We need to know about the age of the participants. We need to know about the lifestyle of the participants. So he sends it back with a recommendation, do not publish. Isaiah next picks out you. What's your name? Nick. You send it to Nick. You look it over and you decide, Angie's right. This is a pretty good paper. But Travis is not wrong. It does need some revisions. So you recommend publish with revisions and you return it to Isaiah. Everybody see how this has worked? How many different sets of eyes have looked at this now? Mine, Ben's, Isaiah, Travis, Angie, and Nick. And we're all established researchers in this field, aren't we? We're all experts. You see where I'm going with this? Even Travis said it's not a bad study, it just needs more done. And I follow up with a letter saying, let that reviewer know that's the next step in our project. It's not showing me disrespect, he's giving me his honest opinion. You're putting your name as a reviewer on this, you're sticking your reputation on it, aren't you? You're not going to want that to see publication until your concern's been addressed, am I right? Isaiah, your journal depends on this, doesn't it? See how this goes? But all of us don't have a vested interest in this. That's why the outside reviewers are so important. And that's what peer review means. They're my peers. They are my colleagues. They are looking at this objectively without a stake in it, except for the science. So does everybody understand the scientific method? Thumbs up if you do. You don't understand it?
I'm right there.
Fair enough. I apologize for using the thumbs up. I got hooked on that with the COVID year. I was teaching everything via Zoom. And I found a way to ask my students questions. Give me the thumbs up if you understand. Imagine my dismay at the end of the year when one of my students told me that meant like. They thought I was trolling them. Okay, so everybody's with me? If you have any specific questions on it?
No, not really.
I think it's one of those things you just need to look over and think about,
Yeah, that's why I got it wrote down.
and that's okay. It may not make sense the first time. Thinking scientifically requires a little bit of a different mindset, doesn't it? There's a lot of things we call science that aren't science. All I ask is that you be fair. If you don't use a scientific method, is it science? Is it fair to ask a question without using science? Is it fair to think through a question without using science? Yes, it is. So here are your limitations. Number one, not every question can be addressed scientifically. Not every question can be addressed scientifically. And number two, this might blow your mind that a scientist is going to say this. Science never proves anything. Science does not prove anything. And this is where I was going to bring up another term that I want you to think about, and we're going to get into it. Everybody see my nice fluorescent yellow pencil? I am going to make a hypothesis. If gravity exists as an attractive force, then when I release this pencil, it will move in a downward motion. Pamela, is that a good hypothesis?
Yeah.
Do you agree with her? Let's conduct an experiment. We all knew it was going to do that, didn't we? Because every one of us has dropped something at some point in our lives. I don't care how agile and fragile you are, at some point you're going to get the butterfingers and when you hit the floor, right? Okay. It's still a hypothesis. It is one experiment away from being overturned. Did you realize that? What happens if I release that pencil and it flies up to the ceiling?
Maybe it's windy.
Oh, now I hear people starting to make excuses. Who said it's windy? Maybe there's a magnet, right? Maybe I really am Professor. Does everybody see what I'm saying? It does mean we have some thinking to do, doesn't it? Does everybody see where I'm going with this? Did I prove gravity doesn't exist? No. I said under this narrow set of conditions, it does not fall to the floor. Did you know you can actually experience zero gravity without leaving the earth? That's centrifuge. That increases the gravitational force.
Been one of those.
I have too. It's not pleasant. Y'all ever heard of the vomit comet?
Yeah.
Anybody here ever seen Apollo 13?
Mm-hmm.
Some of you need to learn to watch movies. There are these cool things like TikTok videos, but instead of 30 seconds long, they're like 30 minutes long. The Vomit Comet is a KC-135 plane that goes up and then dives steeply. And when they dive steeply, basically everything flies up. Gravity is still attracting it though. What it amounts to is you're moving down at the same speed that gravity's pulling you, so you're falling with it. That's why it's called free fall. Very cool, isn't it? The reason I mentioned that about Apollo 13, in the movie where they're filming those scenes in zero G, they actually filmed them in the Vomit Comet. And it's why it's named that. I think you can do your own math. We've all been on roller coasters, right?
Yeah.
It starts out and then you get that clank, 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 and it starts shaking and you're going up and then up and up and up and up and up, and suddenly you start seeing birds fly by and up and up and up, and there goes an airplane below you. And you're up here in the clouds. and you're rethinking about every life choice you make, and you get up to cop and it goes over. How does it feel? Like, I'm with you. Feels like the bottom of your stomach comes up, doesn't it? That does not mean it's zero gravity. It doesn't mean gravity is attracting. It means you're in free fall. Free fall in orbit, you are falling at the same speed you're traveling. Did you know that? Pretty cool, isn't it? Point I want you to get from this, science is not based on proof. It's based on negation. It's based on negation. We invalidate or falsify a hypothesis. This brings us to the term I want you to get down, theory. And theory is a well-supported hypothesis. I never asked you your name, did I? I never asked you your name, did I? What is it?
Annalise,
Annalise. Annalise?
whatever's easier for you to pronounce, a lot of people.
Don't say
struggle
that,
with
or I'll just end up calling you Hey You.
it. It's Annalise.
Annalise, thank you.
Yes.
Don't ever feel bad for correcting me. That's how I learned. Believe it or not, I still learn at my age. Y'all wanna know the difference between an expert and a beginner? The expert has failed more times than the beginner has tried. That's all. It's just practice. Okay. I want to bring up one point. When people use the word theory in everyday language, they imply a certain amount of uncertainty, don't they? In theory, we could all form an army and take over Somerset. We got a nice little crowd here, don't we? I don't think any of us would want to test that, am I right? The reason I'm pointing that out is when a scientist talks about a theory, they're not implying uncertainty. Is everybody clear on that? When a scientist talks about a theory, it's as close to fact as science will let you get. It means every single time we test that hypothesis, it is supported. Get that in your notes if you need to. Every single time we test that hypothesis, it is supported. Write that down in black and white. Go get a tattoo of it this weekend, whatever. No, don't get a tattoo. Unless you want. People say, well, it's just a theory. To a scientist, that basically means it's a fact. But since science is based on falsification, you can't just come to that and say it's a fact. What it means is this: to the best of our knowledge and to the best of our ability to describe it right now, that's the correct one. Could it change in 10 years? Absolutely. Doesn't mean it will. Means that it can't. Everybody cool with that? Okay. Stand up, stretch, pop your joints, take 30 seconds to clear your mind. Let's recognize you said that. So I've been talking about an hour. I think y'all are getting a little bit far afield.
Keep going.
Huh?
So keep going.
Keep going.
I think you've been pretty engaging.
Huh?
I think you've been pretty engaging.
Well, I'm glad I haven't put anybody under the table yet. Y'all wanna hear about the time I actually had a student fall asleep in lecture? Why? Because he never could get to bed. He was up late getting drunk all the time. I was teaching in a 200-seat auditorium, and I had about 30 students. So almost all of the students sat in the first 2 or 3 rows. Otherwise, you couldn't hear me. And since they were sitting so close, I didn't put on the loudspeaker and clip on the microphone. This guy kept coming in late. He'd come in the back door, sit in the second row down, there were about 20 rows going up, and he was knocked out. Honestly, truly, I don't care what I'm talking about or how dynamic a speaker I am. We're all gonna wonder at some point, aren't we? was okay until the guy started snoring.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Third day he was doing this in a row. One student looked at me and said, Dr. Smith, I just can't hear over. I said, okay, I'll fix this. I took the microphone. And y'all see how I like to move when I lecture? That should be enough for you. I got steps. I can run up and down and I can jump on the desk. So I'm just talking and talking and talking, and I walk right up next to our sleeping beauty. And I plop down in the seat right next to him and click the microphone on. Forgot to check the volume. My voice comes booming. That kid jumped about 10 feet in the air. No more sleeping in class. Okay, joke over. Everybody refocused. You're all with me. Yes, believe it or not, that joke was delivered. So let's move on to biology. Biology, you don't have to write this part down. I'm just giving you an understanding where it comes from. It comes from two Greek words. The first one is bios, means life. The second one is logos. Logos means knowledge. So it is literally the knowledge of life, the study of life, the science of life. And if I asked you to define life, I would be willing to bet you probably could not do it. What is life? Really about all we can do is describe it. Describe it. So let's start thinking and come up with a definition. Or no, let's come up with just a list of characteristics of life. Is Travis raising his hand?
No.
Oh. I'll warn you guys, I'm so desperate for feedback. If you flip your hair back or you start scratching your ear, I'll call on you. What's your name, sir?
Wesley.
Okay, Wesley, what's one trait that defines life?
You're not dead.
You're not dead. I've actually been dead for 2 minutes.
Oh.
Seriously, I died for 2 minutes. They got me back, obviously. 0 of 5 stars, do not recommend.
My brother, 5 minutes, just last week.
Oh, I'm glad he's still here. Joking aside, that's an experience. If y'all ever want to hear about it, I'll tell you some other time, not today. It's hard, isn't it? Not dead. We know looking at something that this is a living thing, but how do you call it living? Back in my younger days, when I used to be an evil professor and I really did make it difficult on students, we had these things called an overhead projector. Y'all ever heard of them?
Yeah.
That's the modern incarnation of one right there. The old ones had a mirror and a light, and that light put out a lot of heat. Question?
I have to run to the bathroom.
Feel free. If you ever need to get yourself a drink, take a mental break from me, take a phone call, whatever, it ain't high school. You can step out without, just don't slam the door.
I don't think that was the purpose.
I know it wasn't, I'm just. So what I would do was I would set up a petri dish with a little bit of water in it, and there's this slimy blob that sits in the center of the petri dish. And I tell the students, take 10 minutes to observe this. And I want you to tell me, number 1, is it alive? Number 2, why do you think so? And for the first minute or 3, it just sat there. Then it started tumbling and moving through the water in the dish. Almost everybody would say, it's alive. And I would say, why? I'd say, because it's moving. And then I would really, really fry their brain when I pulled out a tube of rubber cement. You put that blob of rubber cement in there, the light heats up the petri plate, which heats up the water, which causes it to tumble and move and wiggle. See where I'm going with this? I like what you said, Leslie. It's not dead. We unconsciously know it, but you see what I mean when I say it's hard to define, isn't it? So let's see if we can define it. Let's see if we can come up with some traits to describe it. I want somebody to think up one.
What about a cell?
It's made of cells. Okay, there. That's a good one. Angie,
It's a bit of a long one. A state of being in which cells are moving in a positive manner.
a state of being in which cells are moving in a positive manner.
By that I mean like when you're dead or something is decaying, the cells are typically dying and they're moving, but not in a positive manner. I mean like in a reproductive.
Well, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. I like plants. Anybody here like plants? Pretty cool. Do plants move?
In the air, it's moving.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
I think it's very
Grow.
Well, hands up, I can't, I've got a
Well, they
1960s
grow.
vintage brain. It has one track.
What about a fly trap?
Venus flytrap moves, doesn't it?
Sunflowers.
Sunflowers move.
Well, they grow. That's
They grow,
movement.
oh. A better way to put it.
Child grows from cells into
A child grows, did y'all realize that every single one of you has experienced life as a single cell? About 30 minutes of your existence on this mud ball was spent as a single cell. Well, if that doesn't put you in perspective. Oh yeah, well that amoeba, you were like that too. You see where I'm going with this? We're starting to get a little passionate. I've got a couple of people back here arguing. We're not done yet, and we still got 10 minutes.
I'm just putting this up.
What's your name?
Ella.
Ella. Y'all want me to give them to you? Would that be easier? It's a little frustrating, isn't it? Okay, number one. Living things acquire energy from their environment. They acquire and use energy. What's your name? Lucy. We eat, don't we? We drink. That's energy, is how we get it. How do plants get energy? Photosynthesize, the sunlight. It's still getting energy from the environment, isn't it? Y'all heard of the word Chernobyl? There's a fungus growing outside or inside Chernobyl that's getting energy from the radiation. Did you know that?
wow.
Isn't it slowly eating it away to where it's?
Or it's gonna fall through and, yeah, we're all gonna die.
What is Chernobyl?
Oh, man.
The
I didn't
big,
know that.
In Ukraine.
It's
the
okay.
nuclear power plant that went nuclear, also known as the elephant foot stuff.
What's your name again, sir?
Nuclear power
Huh?
plant that
Nathaniel.
exploded.
Nathaniel.
Yeah.
Google it. What happened was, in 1986, the Ukrainians, Russia were part of the Soviet Union, and they had a nuclear reactor accident. That help?
Yeah.
There's no reason you would know it. I gotta remember, y'all are just not as old as I am. How many of you were born before the year 2000? Well, I don't feel so bad. We're in the minority though.
I was born after year 2000.
It blows my mind that the majority of you didn't get to experience the 20th century. But that's neither here nor there.
Well,
You see where I'm going? That's
I
okay.
was that one cell person in the late 90s.
TMI. But thank you for sharing that.
I mean, well,
Back to life. It acquires energy and it uses it. Number two, it maintains homeostasis. HOMOEO STASIS. Homeostasis. That is just balance. Can we stay up and never sleep?
No.
Eventually, you're going to fall asleep. You can't help it, right? We could fast and go a day or two without food. Some of you might complain, but I think everybody could go 24 hours without food. But I guarantee you, after those 24, you're gonna want to chow, aren't you? I got better this one.
Longest I went's 3 days. After about 24, hunger becomes a long gone concept.
There's actually some benefits to that,
Yeah, your body starts eating the bad cells, they say,
they say.
allegedly.
But we maintain that balance, don't we? We get thirsty, we drink. We get cold, we cover up. We get hungry, we eat. Number 3, it grows and develops. It grows and develops. Isaiah, for instance, sharing more information than we ever wanted to know about his growth and development. Believe it or not, I was once as young as you. I looked a little different then. Had a little bit more hair, a little less gray. Not old and tired, but looking like I am today. It responds to changes in the environment. It responds to changes in the environment. Kind of scary how my name's different names. What's your name?
Jackson. Jackson?
Jackson.
Kenya. Kenya.
Kenya. And what's your?
Kaylin.
Kaylee. I'll forget y'all by 10 minutes from now, but at least I've learned you this time. I never got your name.
Jenny.
Jenny. And the last thing, it reproduces, or has the potential to reproduce. Let's say that. Every now and then you get the odd duck like me. I'm a maladaptive evolutionary dead end. It's like, that's a funny way of saying you don't have kids. Potentially you could though, right? So all of those traits describe life. I don't know if I could define life. We still got 5 minutes, folks. Hang in there. We said life is made of cells, but let's take that a bit further. Has anybody here ever heard of a virus? Of course you have. We survived COVID, didn't we? Is a virus alive? Does it respond to its environment? If I sneeze on Ben, is he going to get sick?
Possibly.
Possibly. Do they develop and reproduce? They get inside a cell, they go crazy and explode the cell.
Mhm.
Do they acquire energy from their environment?
Doesn't, like, viruses evolve over time? That's why, like, at the start of the pandemic, it was so deadly, but over time, we've slowly grown immune to it, as well as it's gotten weaker for it to survive and spread.
But evolution is a very different question. I'm an evolutionary biologist. We got about 4 minutes left in class. You do not want me going down this road.
Next class.
If we let me go on that, we'll still be here this time in the morning, at 3 in the morning, and I will still be. No, I'll be here by myself, the rest of you won't know. So this guy's nuts.
Just talking to the wall.
Things do change over time, yes, but that's responding to its environment. Is it ideal for a disease to be deadly?
No.
No.
Because it kills all of its potential hosts. But is a virus alive?
Yes.
I heard it's debated.
It's definitely debated, but I'm trying to get you guys
Is
to
it
see
sentient?
something. Huh?
Is it sentient?
Tentatively.
It's alive, but it depends on how
It's a
strong
alive
it
in
is
its own
or
way.
It sounds like I was those 2 minutes before they got me back. Is it alive or is it Memorex? Y'all don't remember that commercial. What it amounts to is, even with those characteristics we gave, there are things out there which challenge the very basic assumptions of life. I can argue probably both sides of that coin for viruses. I can probably convince you they're alive. I can probably convince you that they're not. I can actually show you diseases that are caused not even by viruses, but by protein.
Isn't there one where the proteins just fold in on itself? Now I'm scared.
Bovine spongiform encephalitis,
Like
aka mad cow disease. Y'all ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It's caused by protein. If that protein gets in your brain, you get what's called kuru. It causes your brain to literally fall apart and have Swiss cheese holes in it.
Aren't those like prions?
Proteinaceous infectious particle, that's what it comes from. My point, though, we don't so much define life as we describe life. Y'all want a 30-second review? Definition of science. 5 steps of the scientific method. 4 characteristics of a good hypothesis. Characteristics of life. Think that's enough for David? Huh?
I feel like that's enough for the first day.
I don't know. Is anybody here going to complain about not getting the last 60 seconds of class? I want you to get your money's worth. All right, for Wednesday, make sure you've read the first 2 chapters. If you have difficulty accessing anything, either the syllabus or the book, let me know. You're dismissed.
3 questions.
Thank you.